Hey, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark, and I'm here to teach you about the difference between leadership versus management. Now, a lot of people get the two confused and they approach their work when they've been assigned a leadership role as a manager, and there's a distinct difference between the two. This course seeks to help advance your thinking about how to apply leadership to your everyday work and why there's a difference between management. Now, you will learn the difference between the two, and you will walk away with an appreciation for management, but the goal is to get you to be more interested in, more focused on becoming and developing your leadership skills. And so this course will help you do that. My hope is that you process this information and figure out ways to apply this information to advance your leadership in your organization and to advance your career. Now, just a little bit about me. I'm an executive at a nonprofit based in Connecticut. I have a doctorate degree in strategic leadership, and I have a master's degree in leadership development as well. And I wrote a book called Sustainable: How to Sustain a Faith Based or Nonprofit Organization. This book focuses on some leadership tactics, but particularly it focuses on how organizations can sustain its work without being wholly dependent upon traditional resources from the past. And so, if you're interested in learning how to generate revenue for your nonprofit and to sustain your nonprofit beyond today, go ahead and get your copy of that book. Now, let's get started in the course. I do want to just take a moment to explain why we're doing this course. We're doing this course because 2017 happened. While the economy is doing very well, a number of us around the country live in states where the economics may not have been equal to what's happening around the country. Our state economies may not have kept up with the demand of services that are needed in our communities. And as a result, those of us who have been dependent upon state resources to support our programming and to support our organizations quickly realized that we needed to change course. Now, this is not anything new. This is not something that just happened in 2017, nor is it unique to 2017 or 2018 and beyond. Rather, it's a recent example, recent experience that many of us went through when it comes to ways that we've been able to sustain our organization that needed to be adjusted. And so, as a result of 2017 and probably previous years, I'll throw that in there, nonprofits have had to deal with reduced payments. Okay. Now, we've been getting resources from a number of sources. We get them from our state, from our town or our city, and from private donors. But as time has moved forward and as donors and funders have become more sophisticated and more demanding of their resources, they are trying to figure out ways to do a greater amount of good without spending a greater amount of money. And as a result, nonprofits have been experiencing a reduction of payments, or let me add this in there, a delay in payments, right? You're waiting for your resources to come in, you're waiting to be reimbursed for a performance contract, and you're getting delays in receiving your payments on time for a number of reasons. And some of those reasons may not even be in your control. However, you're still experiencing the delay and it's impacting your cash flow in your organization. In addition, nonprofits had to deal with planning for delayed payments. That means nonprofits have had to get lines of credit, take out loans, borrow against assets that they may have in order to cover their upcoming expenses. For those of you who are wondering, well, why would a nonprofit need to do that? Nonprofits are businesses like any other business that you are familiar with and that you know of. And because it is a business and because that business has expenses, those expenses must be paid for and covered on schedule like any other business. Expenses such as staffing, salary, retirement, health benefits, other expenses such as overhead costs with rent, utilities, etc., supplies, you name it, nonprofits have to pay for it. Now, there may be some discounted costs over the course of an organization's life cycle, but that doesn't take away the fact that organization still must pay its bills. Now, because organizations had to deal with reduced payments, delayed payments, and planning for delayed payments, organizations needed to adjust their programmings. Okay. Programs needed to tighten their belts. They needed to possibly reduce the number of individuals they were serving, reduced number of staff that was assigned to projects, reduce supply orders, etc. And this impacts everybody who has an invested interest in a particular program. It's easy to say it's easy to say to a nonprofit, hey, you need to change the way you do business, right? You need to change the way you operate, but there's a downstream impact that unfolds when organizations have to adjust. Now, this is in no way a sob story. This is in no way trying to guilt folks into stop saying stuff like that, because all businesses, for profit and nonprofit, have to figure out how to navigate through challenges that present itself when the market changes or adjusts. And so nonprofits are no different. And so we've needed to tighten our belts. We've needed to reduce expenses, some expenses that were unnecessary. We've needed to lay off folks that may not have been adding value to our programs, but we were keeping them employed because it felt good. Any normal business should not be keeping folks employed because it feels good. They should be keeping folks employed because they're able to perform, which leads me to other adjustments nonprofits have had to make. Not only did we have to tighten our belts, we've also had to improve performance. We've had to deliver on the scope of work we've been assigned to or contracted to perform on, right? We've also had to improve our data collection activities, possibly purchase a data system, get better at data collection and data management. All those things matter in us getting better and navigating through any economic change that will impact our programs. And lastly, organizations needed to focus on their strengths and their abilities in order to survive. Now, in spite of those challenges that I just shared with you, leadership is still needed. In fact, leadership is needed more than ever before. Why? Leadership is needed because nonprofits are important to the balance within our communities. When a nonprofit does not exist, when a nonprofit is unable to deliver on services or provide services, the community struggles and the community suffers. That limits the amount of people who can get assistance to navigate through their life circumstance or to overcome their life's problem or to improve the quality of a community. We could depend upon the government to provide these services, but then we will be relinquishing our ability to overcome our situation ourselves to bureaucrats and to legislation and to law. We could rely upon for profit businesses to assist and support us, but then we would be dependent upon the whims of the decisions they make, whether it's profitable, whether if it's a good business, whether it makes business sense, if they can get something out of it. Nonprofits are in it because of the people. They're in it because they're trying to solve problems. They're in it because it makes sense for the community's ongoing development. And the presence of leadership within nonprofits ensures that there's a proper balance between our stakeholders, our customers, our investors, our staff, and our community at large. Now, let me just continue this thought here. It's reasonable to expect our nonprofits to have solid leadership that not only can manage the books and keep the doors open, but who can develop other leaders that can provide vision and support in the marketplace. Now, all of the things I just mentioned as to why nonprofits provide balance makes a difference, because if your organization is unable to provide steady leadership, steady provision of wisdom and of information and guidance, then your organization runs the risk of not adding value, of not innovating, of not helping the community adjust, not helping the community become better, and ultimately This diminishes the standing of your organization in the community, and it diminishes your ability to impact and influence the change you believe is necessary in your community. Just like any for profit business must continue to develop leaders to take on new leadership roles, to replace individuals who are leaving and retiring, nonprofits must do the same. Because when you think back at the situations I identified that impacted us in 2017, 18, and in earlier, and years earlier, you have to agree that leadership is needed to navigate all of that. Leadership makes the difference in how we're able to navigate changes in the economics, changes in expectations, changes in the provision of services, in how we deliver services, in our ability to manage data, etc. So good leadership makes a significant difference in that way. Now, we've seen the unique contributions nonprofits make, and we see the impact organizations are having. However, funders are becoming more hip to figuring out ways to ensure we are able to deliver on the services we claim that we can deliver. We provide all of this great stuff in our grant applications. We tell an awesome story in our grant applications. But funders want to make sure that what we say on paper is in fact what we're doing on the ground. And they want to see a connection between what's written and what's being done. And so they're evaluating that. And as they make that evaluation, as they make that determination, it becomes even more paramount for leadership to exist. To not only direct and lead a team to write quality content that is fundable, but also direct and lead a team that can deliver on the services it says it can do. What disappoints a funder is when an organization is unable to deliver, unable to provide the services it claims it's capable of doing. That harms that relationship, and it forces funders to look elsewhere to give their dollars. And so this, among other things that I'm going to share with you, justifies the need for leadership and why we're talking about the difference between leadership and management. Strong operations of a nonprofit organization fuel true performance. Strong operations. Now, in order to get strong operations, there needs to be someone who understands the tactics of good management and the tactics of good leadership. How do you influence people? How do you get people to do more, to do better, to do their best, so that you can realize your maximum potential? And let me just close this particular section out by sharing this truth with you. The truth behind high performing nonprofits and organizations is they are undergirded and supported by strong leadership development within the organization. Not just at the top, but all leaders who are at the top and those who are emerging, who are ascending, are being developed, actively developed on an ongoing basis. And it makes a difference in an organization's ability to sustain, to thrive, to grow, to mature, to be its very best self at all times. Now, I want to share a couple of thoughts with you before we get into the meat of this. And that is, leadership is needed for an organizations and teams to move forward. If you believe that leadership is not necessary, then you're saying that there needs to be no one that makes the final decision. You're saying that needs to be no one who takes ownership for what happens within the organization. There needs to be no one who is able to guide and direct the team, the organization, customers, stakeholders, investors, etc. No, at the end of the day, you need a leader to advance the work of the organization. Developing a leader, developing leaders, having a leadership development program is essential for ongoing, consistent success. There has to be the development of leaders constantly happening within your organization, because there will be times when you, as a leader, will be absent in meetings, away on a trip, vacation. Maybe you leave the job one day. Who's next? Who's stepping in? Who's filling the gaps? Who is there to continue the work of the organization? Dare I say that some of our nonprofits struggle because there's an absence of ongoing leadership development. There's a gap in leadership pipelines in our organization because we are not developing leaders downstream. Some of us are so focused on the immediate that we don't release other leaders to develop leaders under them and under them and under them and under them, creating a cascade effect of ongoing leadership development. There has to be ongoing development of new leaders. This is how you get innovation in your organization. This is how you get creativity in your organization. This is how you advance your organization. This is how you stay on the cutting edge with constant development of new leaders who have a voice at the table. Yep. This is how you do it. And lastly, if you've been wondering, how do we define leadership? Leadership, my friends, is simply influence. Influencing a group of people to perform a task or achieve a goal. Influencing a group of people to move in one singular direction. Influencing a group of people to behave in a way that is advantageous for the organization. Influencing a group of people to do what's best for the organization. Leadership is about influence. When you think about people we call bad leaders or amoral leaders, or people who are non-ethical leaders, people who are the bad guys of history, and we wonder, how did they even have the chance to lead and influence countries and movements, and they were just not moral, not ethical? You can question the morals, you can question the ethics of those individuals, but when you look at who they were, what they did, they were in fact leaders, influencers. That's leadership. And I'm saying in this course that your organization needs influencers. People who are able to influence the organization to move forward, to be its best self, to transition towards becoming better, to performing better, to being a high performer, to being a dependable partner, becoming sustainable, relevant, innovative. It needs a leader to influence the organization to do just that. So let's go deeper into what is leadership. Leadership is the process of influencing a group of people or individuals to achieve a goal or a common set of goals. Now, that's leadership. What is management? Management reduces chaos in organizations to make them run more effectively and efficiently. Management focuses on planning, organizing, staffing, and controlling. Management offers significant structure. Okay? That is completely different from leadership. Leadership is about influence. Management is about structure. Two different disciplines, because the structure provides the guardrails by which people are allowed to operate. And leadership influences behaviors, not necessarily by structure, although structure can be used as a mechanism of influence. But leadership uses influence in a number of ways to say, hey, you can do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to inspire you to do X, Y, and Z by way of fill in the blank. Now, this leads me to one of the concepts of leadership, which is transformational leadership. Those concepts include influencing people through intellectual stimulation, their mind. That also includes influencing people by way of being an example, behavior. It also includes motivating people by motivation, finding out what inspires them. These various tactics can be used to get people to move in one direction, getting people to buy in, to invest in what you have to offer. Now, I should point out here that change in an organization led by a leader produces a shift within the organization. Okay. The outputs of good leadership has nothing to do with widgets. It has absolutely nothing to do with widgets. It has everything to do with culture, the way we behave, the way we function, the way we do things, what we consider normal. It has everything to do with performance, our ability to deliver, right? So there is a function of producing widgets under leadership, but leaders really don't worry about 20 widgets per hour and 100 widgets per day per person. That's not what leaders focus on. We focus on our overall contractual agreements and our ability to meet those agreements and the demands of our customer. Okay. So leaders produce shifts within the organization by way of culture, performance, and values. What do we consider important? What do we consider vital to our existence, to our ability to do our work? And if we don't do these things, then we are not being true to ourselves. What is it that your organization values? What is it that your organization considers extremely important? Whatever those values are, that's produced and maintained by a leader. Managers don't focus on stuff like that. Leaders care about the way we do stuff. They care about the morale. They care about norms and standards, the soft skills, the soft things that you can't really see. Because ultimately, leaders care about what you can't see or touch. They care about what's on the inside of their people. This gets back to culture and values. Because culture and values impact performance all day. If your folks feel like they can go rogue, if they believe that there's no standards within the organization, if they sense that nobody cares about the quality of their work, they will do whatever they want to do. They will go rogue and they will not meet the performance standards of your organization. Conversely, good managers, provide order, consistency, and stability. Listen, this course is about determining the difference between leadership and management. This is not to denigrate management because you need good management within your organization. But there's a difference. And while you're taking this course trying to become a better leader, you need good managers who are able to provide order, structure, consistency, stability, stabilization of performance. What are we going to do? What procedures do we have in place to do X, Y, and Z? What's the order of things? What's the order of HR practices? What's the order of data management practices? What's the order of client engagement? In other words, what's our policy? That's what good managers do. That's what they're there for. What's our policy on this topic? Remember, leaders have nothing to do with policy. They have nothing to do with order. They have nothing to do with standards in that sense. They care about culture, performance, and values. Managers care about order, consistency, and stability. This is what we're going to do to get here. This is how we're going to get there. Good managers are necessary. I want to continue to delineate the difference between management and leadership in this course. Now, managers produce order and consistency while leaders produce change and movement. That is a stark difference between the two. Managers produce order and consistency, leaders produce change and movement. When you're evaluating the difference between the two, you should be thinking about where do you see yourself on this spectrum, both in terms of where do you see yourself now and where do you want to see yourself in the future. Because if you're in a position where you're trying to emerge and grow in your career and emerge as a leader, you need to look at the practices you exhibit now versus what you need to practice to become what you want to become in the future, if in fact the leader is that. Again, managers produce order and consistency, leaders produce change and movement. Now, let's go down the line a bit. There's a chart here on the screen, and I want to review that with you to continue to drive home the point that managers and leaders are two different people, two different disciplines. Managers plan and budget. Okay, so they plan and budget, they establish agendas, set timetables, allocate resources. Leaders, they establish direction. They create a vision, clarify big picture, and set strategies. Big difference. Managers organize and staff. They provide structure, make job placements, establish rules and procedures. We talked about that earlier. Versus leaders align people. They communicate goals to everyone. They seek commitment from everyone, and they build teams and coalitions. Lastly, managers control and problem solve. They develop incentives, create solutions, and they take corrective action. Versus leaders, they motivate and inspire. They inspire and energize folks, they support subordinates, and they satisfy unmet needs. At the end of the day, as you're evaluating the difference, as you're looking at this chart, you should see a clear difference between the two. You should notice the difference between the two. You should notice while that one side of this produces order and consistency. And as you're looking at the difference between the two, you should notice the people in your organization that fulfill these roles. It is nothing wrong with being a manager if in fact you're not a leader. But there needs to be a distinction between the two so that you know that there are two different expectations, two different behavioral patterns, two different everything when it comes to managers versus leaders. And you should be noticing things about your behavior as you look at this chart, as you determine where you sit on this chart. Do you produce order and consistency? Do people see you as a taskmaster? Or are you producing change and movement? Are you making a difference? Are you, in fact, establishing direction, aligning people, and motivating and inspiring folks? That's the difference. So I want to share some thoughts from some theorists who have constructed and shaped how we view leadership, how we understand leadership today. Okay. Binis and Nanis in 1985 said, to manage means to accomplish activities and master routines, whereas to lead means to influence others and create visions for change. Wow, managers master routines. It's true. Because a manager's job is to come in and run off the checklist. Did we do this, and this? And if we didn't do none of those things, we got to make sure they get done before XYZ time. Don't get me wrong. Leaders have an element of management in them. They must, in order to get stuff done off their checklist. But their primary job, The primary job of a leader is to produce change and movement. Bennett Sinan has also said managers are people who do things right, and leaders are people who do the right thing. Man, that's a distinct difference. Rosa in 1991 says leadership is a multi-directional influence relationship, and management is Rosa in 1991 says leadership is a multi-directional influence relationship, and management is a unidirectional authority relationship. Whereas leadership is concerned with the process of developing mutual purposes, management is directed toward coordinating activities in order to get a job done. Leaders and followers work together to create real change, whereas managers and subordinates join forces to sell goods and services. It's a clear difference here. Clear difference. Influence versus an authoritative relationship. Zeleznik in 1977 says managers are reactive and prefer to work with people to solve problems, but do so with low emotional involvement. Does that sound familiar? Is that you? Is that someone at your job, in your organization? They work with people to solve problems, but there's a low emotional investment. They act, managers, he says, Zeleznik says, they act to limit choices. Versus leaders, on the other hand, are emotionally active and involved. They seek to shape ideas instead of responding to them, and to act to expand available options to solve long-standing problems. Leaders change the way people think about what is possible. Zeleznik is speaking my language. He says that leaders shape ideas instead of responding to ideas. This does not mean that leaders dismiss ideas, but in the marketplace where innovation is needed, where creativity is needed, where influence is needed, where your organization is trying to win and advance its role and its position in the marketplace, leaders are shaping ideas. Yeah, it's nice that so-and-so is doing X, Y, and Z, but how about this? And don't get me wrong, leaders know when to partner, when to create strategic alliances. That's a part of the work that leaders do. But in addition to that, leaders know, they know the importance of shaping thinking and thoughts and ideas and concepts. Leaders know to expand options and not to be limited by any options on the table. Because frontline staff, managers only respond to the options laid out in front of them. Leaders look at the options laid out in front of them and say, I don't like none of them. Let's try something different. Does that sound familiar? Is there a person in your organization that does that, that just tears up options and says, nope, let's start from scratch and do something fresh and new? Is that you? That's the role of leaders, to influence change and to influence movement towards something. The goal, as you delineate between the two, is to say, I am a leader. My title says manager, but I perform as a leader. If you're aspiring to an ascended role in your organization, I need you to evaluate which of the two is going to get you there. Good management or good leadership. Your choice. There's a clear difference here. Now, I do want to quickly talk about how to develop leaders in your program. And there are 3 things I want to share with you around the ongoing development of leaders. Number 1, you got to provide good leadership coaching. This course serves as a coaching opportunity for you, the person who's looking to strengthen their leadership, who's looking to develop their leadership, who's looking to introduce leadership into their practices. This course, played over and over and over again, will coach you, will push you, will direct you towards becoming the person you desire to be, and will put you in position to make leadership choices, to behave like a leader, as opposed to behaving however you feel makes sense in the moment. So if this is a coaching opportunity for you, Think about people you're trying to develop in your organization. How can you coach them on an ongoing basis? How can you share with them what you're going through, how you're developing, how you're growing, how you're making decisions to coach them? How can you put yourself in a position to evaluate their work so that you can contribute to their ongoing development? Coaching is essential. Second, to develop a good leadership program within your organization, you have to practice self leadership and then teach others how to do the same. Now, if leadership is influence, and from an external point of view, if leadership is about influencing other people to achieve a goal, then self leadership is about influencing yourself to achieve a self designed or self articulated goal. We practice self leadership all the time, right? You want to get up at 4:30 in the morning? You have to lead yourself to do that, meaning you have to put yourself in position to go to bed at a reasonable time, set your alarm to go off at a reasonable time, have a diet that allows you to go to sleep at a reasonable time, remove the barriers that prevent you from getting up at 4:30 in the morning. Those tactics to influence yourself to get up at 4:30 in the morning is what you called self-leadership. Is what we're calling self-leadership. Self-leadership has three strategies that makes it effective. The first are cognitive strategies, how you think, how you process information, the intellectual element of decision making, foreseeing situations, playing them out in your head, looking at scenarios in your head, going through step by step. The second strategy of self leadership is behavioral. Once you think it, you do it. The strategy you come up with, you execute it. I want to get up at 4:30 in the morning because I want to work out, or I want to get work done, or I want to complete X, Y, and Z. And in order to get up at 4:30 in the morning, I think I have to go to bed at 9. I have to eat my last meal at 6. I should get in the shower by 8. I should wrap up all my tasks for the day by 8:45. I should not watch TV beyond 9 o'clock. All those things that make a difference in you getting up at 4:30 in the morning, you're thinking about them. The next step is to do it. So when you get home, last meal at 6, in the shower by 8, all activities done by 8:45, TV off by 9, lights out, down, sleep, go. And my alarm goes off at 4:30 and boom. That's the result of the action. Cognitive, behavioral. The third and final strategy of self leadership is natural rewards. Natural rewards. What benefits do you achieve or realize along the journey to achieving your goal? So, the benefits of having your last meal at 6, you don't feel sluggish, you don't feel slow. Your food will be digested by the time you get into bed. You're not eating too late, right? You're in the bed by 9 and you're getting a good 6, 7, 7.5 hours of sleep. It's just healthy, right? Those are natural rewards. You're more concerned about getting up in the morning at 4:30, and you've put in place practices to help you do that. Along the journey are some benefits that you didn't account for. That, you know what, man, I'm glad I'm getting those 7 hours. I'm glad I'm eating my last meal at this time because I see the benefit in it, and the benefits are X, Y, and Z. From an organizational standpoint, when you're teaching emerging leaders how to become self leaders, there are benefits to the discipline of developing strategies and executing them. And those benefits come from are expressed through coaching. That's the only way they're going to know the benefits of self leadership. And then, lastly, to develop leaders in your organization, you got to teach them to be strategic thinkers and strategic planners, creative, innovative, thoughtful. If you have leaders that are unable to solve problems, to fix problems, to develop solutions, to think outside of the parameters that they currently see, then they will cause your organization, your program, your project to struggle. At the end of the day, you're not trying to create more people that struggle. You're trying to create people that are, in fact, influencing the organization, influencing change and influencing movement. And we need more leaders to be more strategic in their thinking and their planning, to see the puzzles that are in front of them and all the puzzle pieces that are in front of them, and to figure out how to put them together, because they're scattered. And while there may be a map and a guide, that map and guide sometimes just doesn't work out as well as you thought it would. Strategic thinking matters. So there's this one other thought I want to share with you. If you're going to get into the business of developing more leaders, and you want more leaders versus more managers, and you're going to develop them, you need to have some tools in your toolkit to know that you are creating a quality program, a quality process of developing leaders, and you need to know how to measure that. So here are a few questions you want to ask yourself when you're developing leaders. Does your leadership development program or system align with the context of your organization? Does your development philosophy of leaders align with the vision, culture, and goals of the organization you are leading or you are part of? If it does not, stop doing it, because you're setting leaders up for failure. If your organization values this, has a vision for this, has a culture for this, and you're training leaders to do something totally different, you're setting them up for failure, especially when you are unable to change the culture and the vision and the goals of the organization. So whatever the culture, vision, goals are, align the management or the training of leadership with that, so that you're setting them up for success. Here's the second question. Are leaders coached to influence direction, alignment, and commitment among followers and other team members? Are you teaching your emerging leaders to influence their teams, to influence their projects? Do you show them the tactics and the skills and the tools necessary to create that difference, to influence that type of change and movement that you believe in? And if they are being coached, how do you know that they're doing it good or well or effectively? Here's the third question you want to ask yourself. Does your leadership development program promote leadership maturity through progressive assignments and tasks? Are you making things more challenging for your emerging leader? Are you moving the needle so that they are inching forward and towards a more complex role as a leader? Are you creating those challenges that makes them think outside of the box, to think differently? Are you creating the opportunity where they have to flex new intellectual and emotional and strategic muscles they never had to move before? If you're not, you should. If you're not, you should. Here's the last question you should ask yourself. Are leaders cultivated to develop new and innovative solutions? Do you send your leaders out to evaluate and study industries that are separate and different from your own, to find out what works or what could work within your current organization? Is your emerging leader evaluating trends in the marketplace? Does your emerging leader know about ideas, tactics, and strategies that are not yet mainstream, that could, in fact, change the game for your organization? The idea is to cultivate new solutions on a regular basis. New solutions, because that's how you're going to stay on the cutting edge. Now, as we close this course, ask yourself, which one of you, are you a manager or are you a leader? and why? Do you want to remain a manager? And there's nothing wrong with that if you say yes, but just know the answer to that. Which one of you are you, manager or leader, and why? Now, here's the next question. What do you want to be? Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to be a leader? Why? And then how are you going to get to either one that you want to be? And here's another question. How would your leadership change the culture of your organization or your team or your project if you decided to become a leader? If you decided to take on leadership behaviors and tactics and strategies, how would your organization change as a result? How would it benefit? How would your project benefit? How would your team benefit as a result of that? There would be so many benefits to you becoming a leader, but there's also a need for managers as well. Just determine, just determine which one you want to be. This wraps up our course on management versus leadership. I hope you found this course helpful. I hope you found this course informative. Play it back as many times as you need to determine where you fit on the spectrum and to determine how you can move towards becoming a leader if that's what you choose to do. Play this back to encourage yourself, even when things are not progressing the way you thought they would be. Use this course as an opportunity to remind yourself of what your big picture goal is. Use this course to coach other emerging leaders who are trying to figure out how to establish their leadership. Play it for them, show it to them, coach them, share with them what you've learned, what you are learning about becoming a better leader. Your organization will benefit from it. This is Dr. William Clark for the course Management versus Leadership. Thanks for taking this course. We'll see you later.